City Girl Savings launched January 1st, 2015, but I didn't end up going full time until May of 2021, where I was working in corporate while trying to grow this business. As I say that, I wonder how I got it all done and still found time to travel, see friends and family, and focus on my health. It wasn't easy, but it was absolutely worth it. In this episode, I'm sharing how I grew the City Girl Savings business while working full-time in corporate America. Let me say that some things worked well and others not so much. So let me start by giving a little bit of background because certain things have worked out for me to actually be in the position to start a business while working full-time. I was living in California from 2006 through 2013, and I started working for a major financial institution after I graduated college in 2010. So obviously I left for California for college and ended up staying a couple years after college. I worked at that financial institution's building in Simi Valley, California. So anybody who knows that city, I was in Simi Valley for quite some time. Then June of 2013, my dad passed away, and I ended up taking a leave of absence for 3 months and moved back to Texas. So when my dad passed away, I was living in California. I had no intention of moving back to Austin. But, I knew that I wasn't going to stay in California, but I wasn't ready to quit my job. So I just took a leave of absence, didn't give it much thought, and I was granted 3 months. So during that 3 months, I moved back to Texas, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. They had known that I had moved to Texas, but I actually got a call right before my leave ended, and they basically said that they wanted to keep me, and if I was willing to stay with the company, I could work from home and keep my job. And this was back in 2013, so way before COVID, way before remote was a thing. They offered me to work from home. And if you listen to episode 1, Big City Spender to City Girl Saver, you'll know that by this point, I was already putting in the work to turn my financial situation around, and moving back home had expedited that process pretty quickly. But all in all, when I got the call that I could keep my job and still, work from home living in Texas, I accepted and was able to continue making money and continue the progress I was already on. By the end of 2013, start of 2014, I actually knew that I wanted to start a blog and a business helping women learn how to enjoy their life on a budget. I had figured it out, and I knew that if I could figure it out, other women could benefit from what I'd learned. And I had made plenty of mistakes up until I got to the point where I was turning things around, but I was also living my life on a budget, but still traveling, still going out to eat, still doing the things that I enjoyed, just in a way that did not impact my living situation negatively. So that's really what sparked me to start City Girl Savings. And at the end of 2013, start of 2014, once I put my stake in the ground and said, okay, I want to do this, I started project planning everything that needed to get done. And I used the weekends to map everything out. I was still working full time Monday through Friday. So that was my primary focus because that was my main job, my main and only source of income. So it took me about a year, but City Girl Savings launched January 1st, 2015. So all of 2014, I was getting everything ready for the launch. I had hired a web design company to help turn my vision into a reality, specifically creating the form, if you will, where customers could give me their financial information in terms of like income, expenses, debts, everything I needed to create budget plans for them. It took literally all year to get the website done and ready. And even as we approached the launch date, that company ended up working overtime because they didn't manage their time well. And I was not about to not launch on January 1st, 2015. That fresh start, the Virgo in me, absolutely that had to happen. And at this point in time, like I mentioned, I would get my corporate job done like during the day, but I have always been a high achiever, and I think this has, made the ability for me to start and grow a business while working full time much easier. But I was at a point in my job where I would get my work done in about half the day. So I only really needed 4 hours to get 8 hours worth of work done. And so I would obviously prioritize my corporate job, get everything that needed to be done there first, and then I would spend the rest of the day working on City Girl Savings. I used my time as efficiently as possible, but it was never at the expense of my corporate job. And that was what was paying the bills, so that was top priority. And just the type of person I am by nature, I would rather be safe than sorry. So I'm very much a prepared person. And before the business even launched, I set everything up in my business in preparation for a huge influx of work and sales and orders. And that did not happen. Actually, it took me 8 months to even get a sale in my business. And I only got that first sale because I offered to create a budget plan for free for someone. And in exchange for her sharing it, and she shared it. And then from there, I got sales. So it took me 8 months, but all the while I was prepared for all this work and it just didn't happen. But hindsight is 2020. While at the time I could have saved a lot of money by, not preparing for sales that never came, I do still reap the rewards of having things in order ahead of time. So for example, before City Girl Savings even launched, I purchased 1,500 City Girl Savings budget plan folders, so like custom folders for the budget plans and custom envelopes for those folders to be shipped in when people ordered budgets. I have not got through all of them, and we're in 2024, so 10 years later, haven't gotten through all of them. But guess what? I haven't had to restock custom folders, so I'll just appreciate that about myself. So I would say through the end of 2017, I was managing everything pretty well. I was good at my job. I was getting my work done. I was excelling there. I had a good system and flow for City Girl Savings and social media and the work that needed to be done there. I didn't start taking clients, so like my one-on-one coaching clients, until 2016, but there was a slow ramp up, which I think helped make things pretty manageable. It's so funny. I've always thought like with this business, everything would just, spike. Like, I'll launch and it's just going to be an influx of so many people and things. And then I, launched coaching, and I thought it was going to be an influx of so many clients. And all the time that I've been running this company, things don't really work out like that for me. And that's totally fine. I'm not complaining. I can actually appreciate the slow ramp up. It makes sure that I'm able to manage everything that happens. And so just wanted to throw that out there. So I started taking clients in 2016. It wasn't very many, so everything was manageable. When I did take my client calls, it would be in the evening, so after corporate work hours. So I would take calls during the week at this point. And then I would spend my weekends, writing blog articles and planning out content and doing the social media. I had established social media profiles on every platform in preparation for the launch. So I was always creating graphics and content and, always just trying to stay on top of things. Looking back, if I could change this, I actually would have focused on 2 to 3 social media platforms, not all of them. And literally, I had profiles on LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr. Like I was everywhere. And focusing on just 2 or 3 would have allowed me to crush a few main ones and not spend so much time creating content for platforms that really didn't serve me or my audience. But hindsight is 2020. Here we are. So like I said, everything was pretty manageable, through the end of 2017. Things didn't start picking up in my business until 2018. And coincidentally, this was the year that I had decided that I actually wanted to run City Girl Savings full-time one day. So my clients were starting to get results. I was starting to get clients on a more regular basis. Like the budget orders were coming in. I was getting into a groove, and I loved it. I loved what I did. I loved having my time being focused on City Girl Savings. Even though I was working in corporate, I knew this is what I wanted to do. So 2018, I started to act accordingly. As a result as well, this was the first year where revenue started to get close to matching my corporate salary. So it's really crazy. Once I decided that, hey, I think I want to do this full time, and I put that intention out into the universe, and I did things that were in line with me eventually getting there one day, the revenue started to come in, and it started to come into a point where, hey, now it was getting close to what I was making in corporate. So that really opened my eyes. It's so funny how manifesting works. When I decided that this was what I wanted to do and started acting accordingly, things just started to happen so that I could actually see it could eventually be a reality for me one day. So if there's something that you want to do and you don't know how you're going to do it, just put the intention out there, start moving in that direction, and amazing things will happen. But anywho, so I started taking on my clients and having, regular consultation requests come in. So it got to the point where I had to get a calendar system in place. I started by creating a form on the City Girl Savings website. So totally manual, it took me forever, but I created a form for people who requested calls with me, and they would submit their form, their name, email, phone number. I would reach out to them and get them on my calendar. So very manual. Looking back, another thing I would have done differently is used a calendar scheduling system so much earlier. I use one now. I use Acuity now, but I wish I would have done this so much earlier. I cannot tell you how many times I double booked. I forgot to add a call to my calendar. I was late. I had to, message people. I gave myself so much more stress than I needed to. So another thing, I was working for a major financial institution, and I did not want there to be any conflict of interest in what I was doing with City Girl Savings. Up until, 2018, I really wasn't worried. Nothing was drastically changing or happening. But 2018, when things started to pick up and I knew I wanted to do this full time, I started to get worried, and I never told them. And while I don't regret how things turned out, I do wish I would have disclosed it. It just feels more like the right thing to have done, and I didn't do that. I was really acting out of fear, and I would scare myself into thinking about scenarios of them finding out, and I created so much unnecessary stress for myself because I didn't disclose it. And, come to find out years later when I actually left the job, it would have been fine. I could have disclosed it and everything would have been fine. But hey, you don't know what you don't know. So things actually started to get a bit crazy in 2019. I was fully booked with City Girl Savings, and I was still growing in my corporate career. By this point, I had 4 different promotions, and every time it came with more money, but more money means more responsibility. So the workload and the time commitment was getting heavier too. So it's crazy. I was growing at this financial institution. I was growing at my business. Clearly I was growing as a person, and that's why I was leveling up in these areas. But I started to feel it a bit. My days would be, the corporate job. So, and I think my shift was at 7 because I was central and not East Coast, I can't remember, but 7 to 4 was really my corporate job. And then my evenings would be City Girl Savings client calls. So I would get off at 4, and like my first calls would be at 4:30 through like 8 o'clock in the night. And then the weekends would be working on City Girl Savings. So obviously the content, the social media, but also like customer and client work, stuff that had come in throughout the week that I couldn't get to, and then writing the blog articles on top of it all. I started to feel like a robot. This was literally my entire year. 2019 was just grind, work, no days off. I would take, a couple vacations here and there, which helped tremendously, but I was not capable of fully checking out. Fully checking out from the corporate job, absolutely. But I would be on vacation and I would be the girl like searching for cell service on the beach when there's like a beautiful ocean in front of me, because I didn't know how to compartmentalize. I didn't know how to take a break. So it took me a while to get that figured out, but eventually I did, thankfully. But it was rough. It was a lot. My focus was just solely on work, and I eventually got to a point of burnout. And not only did I burn out, but I feel so guilty saying this, but it got to a point where like I would spend time with friends or family or my boyfriend, and I would feel like I should be working. I would want to be working. Like I would think, oh, okay, like 3 hours for this movie, but I could get so much done in 3 hours. It was bad. And I would be so tired at the end of the workday that I couldn't even have a meaningful conversation with my partner. I would get text messages or calls, and instead of thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm looking forward to talking to this person, I would think, oh my gosh, I don't have time to talk to this person. And it just that is not how I want to live my life. It was a brutal time. It helped me grow the business, helped me scale the business. Don't get me wrong. But it was rough, and I don't regret anything. I would have done things a little bit differently. Now, at this point too, I had actually hired some people to help me in the business. So I hired some community managers. Those were like the first investments I made in people helping me with City Girl Savings. And they were to help with the City Girl Savings Facebook group and the social media channels and just being engaged in the community. And some of them are still with us today. Definitely check out the episode behind the scenes of the City Girl Savings team, and you'll hear about some of them. I'll link to it in the show notes. But ultimately, it started as community managers. I expanded some people's roles to virtual assistants to help lighten my load, and it has made a big difference. And to this day, I still have, a few amazing team members that make my life so much better. In 2020, this trend that I had in 2019 of just grind continued. And things got so bad that I actually remember crying to my boyfriend about how overwhelmed I feel and how I felt like I had no time for myself. Like I had wanted this business so bad. I was growing in corporate and reaching my personal financial goals, but I felt awful. And I remember that vividly. I was just so overwhelmed, and it just consumed me. And while I was feeling that, I also felt like it was taking me forever to reach my goals so that I could leave corporate and run City Girl Savings full time. Like I had a meltdown. I was like, I don't think I can do this much longer. Like this has been 2 years of just like grind and brutalness, and it was a lot. And I remember my boyfriend told me that working both my corporate job and running City Girl Savings was actually a huge blessing, and that I should do it for as long as possible, and I should change my mindset. And, he kind of toughened me up a bit. I felt like he was being a hater, like, what do you mean? I'm sitting here struggling and you're telling me that I should continue struggling and doing both? But once again, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, he was right. I was in a position where I could grow my business and not worry about anything financially. Like, money was not an issue with growing my business. Money was not an issue for my personal life because I was working this other job. I could take the pressure off of the business to perform well financially and focus on the quality of work that I was delivering and pouring into my clients and making sure that my content and everything was where it needed to be. And sure, it was a lot and my time got taken away dramatically. But now that I only run City Girl Savings full time, so I left that corporate job, I see that not having to worry about the business making X amount was such a blessing. Like, having this additional stress, or not even stress, but having this additional focus of the business has to make X amount just for it to survive, for me to survive, is an extra set of pressure that I didn't have when I was working in corporate. Yeah, I had other issues. I was overwhelmed. Don't get me wrong. The grass isn't always greener, but now I know what he meant. Having to grow my business without having to worry about money was such a blessing, and it all makes sense now. Hindsight is 2020. But anywho, I didn't know it at the time, and by the end of 2020, I was making the most I was ever making in my business. I had surpassed my corporate salary. I was putting all of the systems in place. Like, I was ready to go. So the stake was in the ground. I was only, at the end of 2020, I was only 4 months away of reaching my goal of having 15 months worth of expenses saved. I know that's a lot. I err on the side of caution and conservative. As I mentioned earlier, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So my goal was to have 15 months worth of expenses. I figured if I could cover my personal bills for 15 months, that would give me enough time to make sure City Girl Savings did what it needed to do for me to sustain it. So I had all the systems in place. I had the help of my team members. I was only a few months away from reaching my goal at the end of 2020. And April 2021, I hit the goal. I actually exceeded the goal because I got a big bonus that I wasn't expecting. But I put in my notice mid-April. I was terrified. Not because I wasn't excited to run City Girl Savings full time. I was. This was my purpose. I knew this was what I wanted to do, but because this corporate job had been so good to me, and I'm getting emotional, it's kind of crazy, but I spent a third of my life up until that point with that company. It was my, crazy. I'm getting so emotional, but that job was so good to me. That company was so good to me. It had been with me through, my dad passing, moving my life to Austin, my mom's health journey. It was such a good job. And I was just sad. I was sad, not specifically for the job, for, the company, the people. Obviously I was sad about that, but I think it was a part of my life that would no longer exist. And, as I'm realizing how emotional I am, I realize I probably put way too much of myself in that job, but you don't know what you don't know when you're 20 years old, out of college, entering the workforce. But, that job was good to me. That company was good to me. Those people were good to me. They were there when my dad died. They were there throughout the process of moving to Texas, and they let me handle things with so much flexibility. I got promotions, I got raises, I got bonuses. There were people who advocated for me. They invested in my development. They allowed me to travel regularly. I had a small stint with that job where for 6 months, I was just traveling up the Pacific Northwest, and it was a special project, and I got picked for it. And it was such a comfort having that job. I met my boyfriend at that job. My life partner now, we met at that job. There's just so many good things that came out of that corporate job. And, obviously spending a third of my life there, it saddened me that it was ending. But I knew I had to do it. I faced it, and yeah, I put in my notice. My manager cried. It was a whole big thing. And she actually convinced me to take a leave. So when I put in my notice, I didn't really specify why. I just said, hey, I'm going to be leaving, and, this is my 2 weeks notice. And obviously she asked why. Like, I was growing. They were about to give me another promotional title. I was already a VP at this point. They were going to, give me a title of senior vice president. And, I told them that, my primary focus was my mom. Her health was declining at this time. And, she really needed more of my attention. And obviously, like, I hadn't told them that I had a business. So I didn't want to share that. But I did eventually tell my manager that also, too, like, it's not that I'm going to be without income, because I have a business outside of my corporate job that I'll still be focused on as well. And she told me, you know what? Take a 6-month leave, focus on your mom, give it some time, do whatever you got to do, and see how you feel. I don't want you making like a rash emotional decision. Little did she know it wasn't. But I took her advice. I took a leave, and at the end of my leave, I didn't end up going back because I knew I wanted to run City Girl Savings full time. And right after my last day, so when I gave the 2 weeks notice, worked out my 2 weeks, the day after my last day, my boyfriend and I got to spend 9 days in Hawaii to celebrate, and it was literally one of the best trips of my life. Hawaii is obviously amazing, but I felt so accomplished at that point, and it was 6 long years of working in corporate and running City Girl Savings and grinding and overwhelm and just stress and long weekends, and it was a lot, but I wouldn't change my experience for anything. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about what I was capable of as a human being. I learned that I didn't, want my life to look like it was so consumed and focused on work. I had set a huge life goal and I achieved it. It has been an amazing journey. I'm excited for what's next, where this journey will take me after. But that's my story. That is how I grew City Girl Savings while working full-time in corporate America. And I want to leave you with this. If you are debating starting a business, I would strongly encourage you to do it while you have other income. It will make your life so much easier in terms of not having to worry about money. Yes, you'll learn to manage your time wisely, but it will be worth it. So if you are thinking about starting a business, do so while you have money coming in. I hope my story inspired you, and thank you so much for listening.